So hello everybody and welcome to this week's live stream. You'll notice from the title that it says that we're going through all the modules starting from U, which is where we got up to last week. However, there is no U. There are no modules that start with U. So done. We're first going to actually show some new things that I've added recently that will be in the next firmware update. So if we have a look at the mono reverb, it will look the same for the stereo one. We now have this rather pretty reverb browser here, where you can browse through different reverbs. You get information about their location, like this one's near Rockhampton, in Capricornia, in Queensland. This is Poly headquarters, where I am right now, in Melbourne. And there's ones all around the world in different places, but there's also all the, digital ones and analog ones, Springs and famous digital and analog gear. And if you go into a particular capture set, it'll say how many captures there are, what type of capture it is in the space of real space, and it'll give you a bunch of, a section of information about it. In this case, when the building was built, what type of building it is, some of the features of it. You also have a search up here. Here you can also search through tags, so if you want to search by real to get all the real spaces, you can, and then these are all the real spaces. You can tell they've got the pink real space tag on them. So this is all the real spaces. And then the same thing for, digital or analog. So, yeah, that's the search stuff. And, yeah, you can browse and, change reverbs like that now. Oh, and that's the highlighted one. That's the current reverb set. So yeah, that's now how you can browse through reverbs, and in a much more I think gives you a much better idea, because when we say, oh, this is a cave, you don't really know, is that a big cave, a little cave? Same thing as like this concert hall or this concert hall looks really different, and the size of this basilica, that that could be a big venue or a small venue, and so being able to see what the actual things look like gives you a much better idea of what they're what you expect them to sound like. Obviously, for the digital and analog gear, it's not as helpful, but you still get a rough idea of kind of what kind of thing it's going to be. And then it's easy to tell, oh, okay, what is a 480L? Okay, it's a thing that looks kind of like that. That's going to sound different to a thing that looks like that, one assumes. So, gives you information there. The same thing is now out, will be in the next update, for, search works here too. In the previous version, I did realize there was a problem with search, which I have now fixed. He says with medium confidence. This is my testing one, so. Oh, there we go. Okay. I had favorites turned on. That's why. So we now have the same kind of interface for what's called cabs as well. So you'll see that there's a nice browser interface for cabs, where you see how the cab looks, or you see a pretty picture of Leon. So yeah, you can get a rough idea of all of these different cabs that we have got pictures for. Some of the ones, they're imported ones, so some of the ones you don't have pretty pictures for, but Yeah, and then if you jump into a particular one, you'll now have a list of, all the microphones and a bit of information about that cab. So hopefully that's a quicker and easier way to browse through both, and the same, you can search in cabs here, like you can search for tags, like you can search for, if you want to see just the bass ones, or you can search for bass and get all the ones with that tag. So now we're not seeing any of the guitar ones, we're just seeing the ones that say bass as their tag. Or, if we want to see just the ones that are Ampeg, we just get the Ampegs. So yeah, easier way to navigate through the cabs. And yeah, will work for imported ones as well. I am also making some changes to Spotlight. Spotlight's, I think, a really great, slightly biased, but a really great feature. But it is quite, I think, underutilized at the moment. So the idea always with Spotlight is that you can hold this down to that and say exposed in Spotlight. And then if you've got lots of different modules with lots of different controls, you can go over here into Spotlight and you can see them here and quickly and easily navigate between them. And so you can touch them and they come up on the knobs, and if you had lots of them here, you could touch all of them and navigate around very quickly. To have a nice overview that's kind of a performance view for when you're on stage, so you can easily get to any parameter and change it. That's kind of really the point of Spotlight, is to have a nice stage kind of ready view. Because say you've got 50 different little modules around here, or say 10, each of those modules might have 20 or 30 controls, but really okay, when I'm on stage, I really want mostly to change the mix and level from my wet dry, and maybe I want to change my delay time or something like that. So you expose those levels, those three things. You grab grab a delay. Oh, that's the ADG guitar. You grab a delay. And then you could expose one of these. That's feedback. You could expose feedback, and then this one now has delay feedback and VCA gain as controls here that you can control here, and then they get assigned to knobs. So yeah, I'm working on improving that a little bit, just because I think currently it's underutilized and people aren't getting enough out of it. So that's really something we want to kind of enhance, so people do get enough out of Spotlight and that kind of stage interface. But so there's some of the things. There's a few of the updates I've made recently. There are a few more that will be happening in the next little bit. I have a new machine arriving this week, so I'm going to take a little bit of a break to play with that from firmware updates, mostly because we need to get it into here. It's a punch. So we're going to be punching out enclosures, which will be fun. It's a giant turret punch. But yeah, then we will get back to more firmware and stuff after that. So yeah, that's the new stuff. Hopefully, I know at the beginning of the last week's stream my audio was a bit dodgy. Hopefully everything's working smoothly. So if you ever have any issues hearing anything I'm babbling about, please tell me. And as always, if you have any questions about either Beebo or Flat 5 or Hector, please ask them in the questions, on the commenting thing in the stream. So now we're going to continue with our normal, module run through, and we are, as I said, there is no U, which we said we were up to. So we're up to V, and the first thing in V is the VCA. Now the VCA is a kind of central module that you'll probably have seen many times already. The VCA it stands for Voltage Controlled Amplifier in Synthy terms, which just means it's a thing that makes things quieter. It's a volume knob for other stuff. So you've got your signal comes in and out, but it's got a control here. So it's got this gain control, and that gain control can be controlled from in this case it says voltage controlled, from a control voltage, a CV. So I'll just get rid of all of my dry through here, and then I'll show you an example. So we're just going to connect up this one through. I'm running out of 1 and 3. Let's go for full volume, and if we strum. And look, now we're quieter. So any paths you want to control your levels on, just put a VCA on it. Now, so if you want to control a send to a delay, you can do it with a VCA. If you want to control the level of a return from anything, you can do it with a VCA. So everything, if you there's a particular effect, you're like, oh yeah, we want lots of that. But then you're like, I want the bit crush to be really crushing, but I also want it to be not that loud. Just put a VCA after it. VCAs are a central part of the thing, so just they're almost free computationally. Sprinkle them around anywhere you feel like. I thoroughly recommend either having a VCA on your dry path and your wet path, or having a wet dry, because it's really useful to be able to control the level of the wet and the level of the dry. Often you'll want to control VCAs via something else. So let's add a basic one of those. I can show with a couple of different LFOs. Luckily, search now finds, if you search for LFO, you'll find anything that says LFO in it, which is kind of handy because it now makes it more obvious that the looping envelope is the fancy LFO, which you should use every time you need a fancy LFO, and the LFO is the basic LFO. So we'll just grab a basic one for the moment. Connect that guy up like that. We're doing unipolar because we're just doing between 0 and 1, so positive numbers. We don't want to switch phase. Tempo's fine. And now if we strum, tremolo. And we can get different tremolos. Very easily. And amplitude modulation. See, so that's just with a VCA, and the tremolo, you already get into some pretty crazy stuff. But again, you can just do really simple. We just turn that back down to a sane speed. Maybe a little bit less than that. And we already have nice basic tremolo. So yeah, VCAs are really a central part of things. Remember, if you've got something that does a control, like an envelope, that's meant to, you don't connect that directly to an audio source. You connect that CV thing into a VCA or something like that. So you'll have, if we're controlling this via an ADSR, an envelope, or any of these envelopes here, we can grab one of these. This will connect into the VCA instead to control things over time if we're doing things via triggers. Andres asks, what is the best way to use external MIDI to turn off modules on and off? It's actually really, actual switching of modules on and off is only currently supported with like foot switch bind like that. So that's foot switch binding. You just hold the foot switch and you hold the module and you press the foot switch. You can't do it straight by MIDI. However, you can use what we're showing right now, a VCA, to turn off a chain. the way you would do that, I'll just get rid of this guy. So we've got this VCA here, and say you've got a chain with a delay on it. We'll just grab a delay, this delay. So we've got a delay, and we might want tails on that delay, so let's have it on the send, not the return. So we're going to disconnect our outs, connect that up to the delay, like that. We would also want to have a path for dry. So now we've got delay, and now we can go into this one, MIDI learn. You just click this one to MIDI learn. I don't have a MIDI controller plugged in right now, but you click this one, MIDI learn, turn your knob, or press your foot switch, whatever, that sends MIDI, and it will turn on and off this, and therefore change the level of that, and therefore change the, mean there is no signal going into the delay, therefore you'll get trails in this case from the delay, because the signal will be turned on the off, so it will keep going on the trails of it, but won't be getting any more signal into it. If you wanted it to turn off straight away, you could put the VCA afterwards. You could also put a VCA with a slew limiter afterwards. So slew limiter running into VCA, if you wanted to fade in and out. So if you want, just following up on the next bit of that question, how do you go about changing values with a foot switch? That one I can show. So using our continued example of this VCA, let's grab a foot switch. We'll just type in foot, and we'll grab foot switch A. So foot switch has a number of options. It has what its on value is and what its off value is. They can be either way around, so you can have the off being higher than the on. It also shows what its current value is here. That's useful, and you can see it changes tap tempo when you tap it. That value is useful because it does mean that you can bind that to MIDI, so you can have something that works with a foot switch or with MIDI. So let's connect this up to there. So there. And now, normally what I would do here would actually be just turn off this delay with this foot switch if we wanted to do that. So now, what... So you'll notice no delay. And then when I turn it on, my gain will be controlled by the foot switch. All right? See how we're getting what's called repeats when we do that? And they're still going, but when I hit again, I'm not getting any new information in because the repeats are happening, the tails are still going, but the VCA is now turned off. So I'm changing the value of that. In this case, I could actually turn off this part, but in this specifically, I'm sending a different value in this one. So I can do the same thing to send a value into the delay, which I think, if I just double check these questions, yeah, 2 values in a delay patch, yep. So the same thing with, I'll just disconnect this from here, run this one into here, value out. So, so the tempo out will obviously change my, will tap temp tempo to get the tempo into the delay, if you want to do that. If you want to change that one. But say I want to change feedback here. Now, my two values here will now control what my feedback is. So you'll see that now when no, feedback set to short, held, feedback set to infinite. So I just change what those values are to get different behavior from that. All right, and Andres asks, what if I was trying to do that with an external connected foot switch, like some over MIDI? Then you just bind directly. So you just do MIDI bind like that. You can MIDI bind to that VCA. Or in the case of the one I just did over here, this delay, you just MIDI bind to feedback. Just hit there and do learn. So that's how you'd learn a specific one. If there's something where you want to do something more complicated, like you want to control the level, but you want it to fade in, and your MIDI controller, it won't necessarily be able to say, hey, I want to fade to this value. I want to send this range of values. Instead, an easy solution to that is you add a sum module. There's a lot of ways to achieve this. You can add a sum module. It's just got two things that are added together. You MIDI learn one of them, and then you can connect this into that the same way I've done with the foot switch. It's still a CV out, and that means you can filter this CV through something like a slew limiter. So you've still got all those features with the things you can do to CVs. So that's both ways, if you want to do it with the MIDI bindings or the other ones. Can one foot switch change multiple values? Yeah, you can connect it up to multiple things, because it's just, from there on, it's just CV, right? And you can connect it up to multiple things. For instance, you can do super magical stuff if you want. Like, say you want this one, you could run this one into this sum here, right? It goes in A. Now this value, the value from this one can go into this, and then this one can go in this as well, and they can be offset. So you can have it controlling a range of different values as you want. This one can then run into, say you want to control it having a different maximum range. Well, luckily there is a module for that, conveniently called max. Same, there's also one called min. So you can now constrain this range by just running that into max. Now this one, we can constrain what our max range is in there, and we can add things in to offset those. And then this one can route into whatever you want. So yeah, you've got, when it comes to CV stuff like that, you've got like a ludicrous level of flexibility, because then you could say, oh, I want to smooth how that behaves. Oh, actually, maybe you want to do the opposite of smoothing that, and you want to run that through a Wavefolder or something, and add, so when it changes like this, it actually doesn't change in a linear manner. You could saturate that CV as well. Any of those options are possible across audio stuff and CV stuff. You can even do things like delay CV signals. So that's the flexibility of the system, is that you can start to get super weird if you want. Some of those are really pretty nice things to be able to do, like being able to have a CV that then then modifies the other, modifies parameters, gives you a lot of texture options, and maybe you want it, something like a delay that's a very cool effect on audio, but on CV, you might be able to then modulate your other parameters in really interesting ways. So yeah, there's a lot of flexibility around that. So yes, that was V, and some questions that VCA's explained. The next one up in V, and yeah, continue. Yeah, if you've got any other questions, please keep asking them. Always happy to work out what's going on there. Yeah, there are some ways that are nicer and less nice in some of these. And again, if you do want to control multiple parameters at once, and from an easy, visible in lots of places way, Spotlight. Use Spotlight. Spotlight's good. So yeah, we are going to continue to enhance Spotlight. And I'm going to continue to convince people to try and use Spotlight. Vibrato. Next up is Vibrato. So let's empty preset. I think I pressed that. Yeah, there we go. And Vibrato. Vibrato. So like many of the ones that have a built-in LFO, there is an option with a built-in LFO, and there is an option with an external CV input. So that uses just the thing we were just discussing. So you've got that incredible flexibility of being able to do things from having a CV input, or you can use the simpler version that already has that built in, so you can do it with just one module in case you don't want flexible. Sometimes you just want straightforward. And the vibrato in its default form is still, there's still some stuff going on. So you'll see there is many parameters. Let us connect these ones up. Now, vibratoing. Now, you'll see that the vibrato has quite a few options. Some of them are pretty straightforward, like BPM. Obviously, you can tell vibrato is quite slow, quite fast. Now we get into some of the more confusing stuff. So there is feedback gain here. So see that, make it much more extreme. So yeah, making it much more extreme. Now there is controls on the filters themselves, the notches. So there's the frequency of the first notch one, where it's going to, what the width of the notches are, which will change. Basically, these all change. This is min, max frequency, so where they're going in between. Watch what the depth of the notch is, so how aggressive that filter is. Yep, sorry, I realized I just leant in front of the camera. How aggressive that notch depth is, and the frequency ratios between the notches. Invert. You see that, change it, basically switches around which ways that's going. So, you see that's a pretty straightforward control. There is one that's phase. You see. Mostly going to be more relevant when you've got more things going on. One control that is quite confusing is this one that is just a big switch that says vibrato mode on. So with vibrato mode off, So you see when you turn vibrato mode off, this it starts to become much more like, you know, a much more phasery, flangery kind of sound. You'll see this with the vibrato mode on. You'll see it's much more pitchy. So yeah, that really changes the character of the whole algorithm. So that's a big, you know, if you're thinking, oh, well, I'll just switch this knob and it'll do a little bit of difference, that's a big change. So you'll have to then think about tuning the rest of your parameters to get the right things out of the, you know, the vibrato. You can, of course, notch depth will control most of the... But you'll see, even if you have that one all the way down, that's still not going to be the same as having a wet dry on this, just because of the way it blends. So this one, if you do want to change the kind of overall depth of this, you're going to want to have a wet dry on that, which I often recommend anyway, to have like a nice clear control between your wet path and your dry path, and then be able to control the levels of your wet and your dry independently. It's a big way to make things easier. So lots of people ask questions about gain staging, and that's a big part to make that easier, is having control over the wet and the dry path and your overall levels of each. Internally, you're never really going to run into clipping because it's all done in what's called 32-bit float. So there's a lot of dynamic range internally. So you're never going to really need to worry about in-between stages clipping, but you do want to think about the level balance between your wet and your dry. So that's often a thing. So yeah, that's the vibrato module. Again, Vibrato Ext is the same thing, but with the what's called external CV input. So it's got a little input at the bottom. These little circles are how many CV inputs. This one doesn't have any CV inputs, whereas this one loses the controls for the LFO times and takes in a CV instead. All right. Oh, we're getting to some other. There's another fun one coming up. There's a fun and weird one coming up, in all truthfulness. So we're continuing with V. Maybe I needed more vinyl. What is vinyl, you will say? Actually, I'm going to chuck a stereo wet dry at the end of this because I want to be able to control levels a bit more. Out to wet L, out to wet R. And then I'm going to go to 1 and 3 because that's what I'm running out of. All right, you'll notice I haven't connected any inputs yet. It will generate sounds without them, but I can connect some. Here we have our menu controls. We'll turn our levels down to start with, just to make sure. And we'll turn on some of everything. And then we will turn up our level. And you'll notice we have all the characteristic crackles, pops, and wobbles of vinyl. We have the motor noise, general noise, crackle, static, rumble, and crinkle. We also control the frequency character of the sound going through via this aging frequency. So we have full range, and we'll start to get No aging. More and more aging. Kind of the cutoff on that one. And see, that's affecting my guitar signal as well. It's affecting the actual signal that's going through there. You can change the pitch of the... I'll turn aging down. Pitch of those. Pitch of your crackle. How low your rumble is. Your crinkle, sorry. Maybe low rumble. And you can turn on just one of these if you want. You hear that there's just that low occasional thing. There's some crackle. So yeah, very powerful, flexible vinyl noise making module for all your vinyl noisy needs. You can, of course, let's grab a sum to show the thing we did earlier. There are lots of CV inputs here as well, so you can control the volume of some of these over time just with a CV input. In case you want them to fade in or fade out, or have more character over time, but you might want to connect the chaos controller up to them to make them change in more long, undulating ways. They're all options. So that's the vinyl one. So yeah, you can. It's a relatively CPU heavy model tool because it's doing some craziness, but it can do some fun stuff. Obviously, it's actually generating sound, so if you have it on a delay, you'll still get those sounds. But you can get to some, fun textures. You might want to fade it in and out with the delay, so you don't constantly get the crackle. If you want that to happen, if you want crackle just on your repeats, yeah, you'll have to do a little bit more cunning there. Because again, it is actually generating noise. It's actually a synth, not just an effect. It is doing both. Like if you turn all of these off, it is doing things to the input sound on that via this agent control. But the main characteristics is all those things, the actual pop and things that it's generating that isn't dependent on the input, because normally on a record, it doesn't matter what the information on the record is, it's the dust and crap that's stuck to it that's can make the noise. So that's vinyl. And then there are only a couple left, and then we're actually done. Warmth. So that's the end of V, and then we're up to W, which, yeah, we can probably not. We might as well do the rest of these. There aren't very many. Warmth. And then I'll have to think of what the plan is for next week. So yeah, warmth, it's just a basic tube or tape emulation, depending on which direction you have the thingy set, tape or tube. Yeah, again, if you think of any questions, feel free to ask. Drive does what it says on the box. So let's crank this one into here. We don't need a wet tri-stereo. Let's just have a friendly VCA in there instead, so I can control my overall level. Just in case this gets a bit hectic. All right, warmth. Little bit of drive. So the tapey one will, have quite a different frequency response, very different compression characteristics. Yeah, so that'll change different compression characteristics. I'll just turn down VCA a tiny little bit, so I keep my levels in. That's probably going to be fine either way. So you see we're getting a little bit gainy there. There's actually a little bit of overdrive happening. So that's in the tube setting now. So you see the tape's compressing a lot less. Quite a different high frequency response as well than the tube at the higher gain settings. Now if we turn down our VCA here a little bit, maybe not that much, and we put on a bit of oomph for the input from the 5.5. You're getting a bit of gain just from this warmth module now. And a bit of breakup in the tape one as well. So yeah, they're different characteristics that you might want to use. So you might want to have that either, if you want your tube-driven spring or something like that, you can put that on the send to your what's called a reverb IR, or you can have it, if you want a delay to sound more tapey, you can have the you can have an IR of the tape and a this tape compression. So that's a nice combo of how to get more tapey delay, which, yeah, I could show, but maybe if we've got time. Wavefolder, all right. The Wavefolder is pretty aggressive. And all stuff, yeah. Run a VCA after this one. Turn the level right down. Right down. So this warmth was like a more gentle drive. The Wavefolder is the more brutal drive. By which I mean, oh god, the pain kind of brutal. So you want to wavefold against something. So it's going to be different whether you're the carrier or the modulator in your Wavefolder. So go to somewhere here and see if we... Fine. Quite calm. And we'll go up to number of folds. Oh, that was at 0 folds, so that's why it was calm. All right, yeah. Now we have some folds. And see, I've turned the level like way down. still aggressive as hell. Yeah, the Wavefolder really is, you know, I hate my signal and I want it to die. Is the correct. Yeah, if you want clean, smooth distortion, go somewhere else as far as the Wavefolder. But it is kind of fun because it sounds different than everything else. And remember, right now I'm just running direct. Like there's no IR, there's no amp, there's just Wavefolder. If you push it a little harder, see, I cranked on the Schottky diode from the flat 5 there, and now it's just brutal. And yeah, that's pretty. Yeah, that's some crunch going on there. So the main character thing you'll be controlling is this number of folds. Your input levels. If you have the oscillator turned off, your other what's called other input, because you're going to be folding two things together. So remember, you can run two different signals into this. You can fold your signal against itself, which isn't going to be super exciting. So that's folding the signal against itself. Now, if we disconnect our carrier. Wavefolder. And I'll turn this level right down because the next bit will get crazy. So, and we'll turn on internal oscillators. And we'll fold against those. And this gets real hectic. So you got that. Yeah, so you see I've turned down my gain like a whole lot because the Wavefolder, as I mentioned, hates your signal and wants it to die. So I was going into modulator there. You'll see it's quite different if we go into carrier. As I noticed. And you'll see, not getting anything exciting out of there. We're now just an oscillator. And we'll have to turn this guy off to get anything out of that. So yeah, because I already had something, the internal oscillator going as the carrier. So yeah, oops, crunchy. So yeah, remember, this can get very aggressive and you get very crunchy sounds out of it. So definitely do things to control your levels before you start running the Wavefolder. It, however, does get you, as you noticed, some it's pretty interesting sounds. It's not for your subtle distortion, but it can be fun. Oh, I got a question from Matt. So hopefully you survived the Wavefolder. Hey, it's not gentle, but sometimes you need something a bit rougher. The question from Matt is, can we change NAM values with switches, for example, a foot switch? No. Currently, no. No, kind of, would probably be the more accurate response. You can't switch between two because it takes time to load the next NAM model into the module. So you're going to have some kind of dropout in that time because you'd have to load the next model in. It's going to be at least some period of not having something loaded. There is a workaround though, and it's the same trick you can do to switch between lots of other modules. Yeah, it's the same trick you can load between lots of other modules. Is, say we want to add, we can do it to switch between two different delays, like you asked. I think that was you earlier. With a foot switch, I mean. So say we have two different delays. We'll duplicate these guys. Our duplicate button down there. And we set them to different. This one's set to this, the other one's set to whatever it was set to before. And now, I bind one of them to A. I turn it off by pressing the A once. And then I bind this one to A. Now, when I press A, it toggles which one's active. So this one's on, and then the other one is on. This means that you can toggle between the two full settings with the A foot switch. So you could do that with NAM as well. You have two different models loaded in, two totally different models, and then you can switch between them. I haven't tried that with an amp. I don't know if it'll be totally clean as far as like, you press the button and it'll just sort of say, like, I don't think it would be totally clean. I think it could click because you're you're starting the different model. But it would be worth a go. It does work nicely with lots of other modules. Like in the case of these delays, you'll see, run these guys into this VCA, crank our levels back up. I don't know if these are getting obviously different enough. This one's got tons of feedback and a time of relatively short. This one will go right down in our times, I think. So yeah, we've got and then really short. Maybe I'll make that even more obvious with boatloads of repeats and lots of level. See, this one's got, a lot more, lots of repeats. And now this one's going to start fading in because it doesn't have any, new information going into it. And we're into the short delay. So you can do a trick, I'm going to do it away from the microphone. You can do a trick like that for anything where you want to do those kind of toggles like that. So that's really useful to have a variety of different sounds in a preset if you want to be able to switch between them really easily. Okay, and the very last module in the run-through of modules is the one we have shown many, many times, is the wet dry, the last of W. There's a stereo wet dry and a mono wet dry. They have level. They have, whether it's the wet or the dry, which goes from fully wet to fully dry. And so this one can be, what's called it? Modulated. The level can be modulated through a CV. And this one, the shape, is the crossfader curve, if you're imagining it as a mixer. So basically it's, using my drawing skills, it's, so either the curve is flat, flat, flat like that, so you've got a bit where they're both in, or it could be a curve that looks like that, where there's, there isn't a constant middle point. So it basically changes how that wet-dry curve feels, which is handy in case you're modulating the wet-dry. Then it might, you might want to have that feel a little bit different. So that's why shape exists there. It's the same as, if you've ever used a DJ mixer, there's usually shape on the crossfader, and that changes how those fades, whether you want a quick or a gentle blend or cut. And I've wiggled my pedal. We're up. And then there's the stereo version, which is the same. That has the stereo ins and outs for wet dry as well. So thoroughly recommend using wet dries. Pretty much, they're an essential module to stick everywhere, basically, because you probably want one of them on your, to control the level of your wet path and your dry path, and your overall levels. And these are very good things to bind to things in the, to exposed things in Spotlight. Because then you can have overall control over the level and blend in your patch, the wet-dry blend. And that is the end of the run-through of all modules. So I hope you have enjoyed this first series of live streams. I'm sure as we continue to add new stuff, we will continue to have more videos of new stuff and run through more patches that explain other concepts. So I'm probably going to do future live streams that are more theme-based, like I'm going to talk about, MIDI or some particular bits of synthesis or particular types of, hey, how can we do a really nice sounding tape delay or something like that? Just whichever, different amp sounds, how to go running through the capture process, all that kind of stuff. So if you've got any other questions, feel free to ask them. Otherwise, I hope to see you all next week. Cool.